Hello guys, this is Modest Major here, bringing you some commentary over some Halo 3 MCC gameplay. Score in the background's a pretty decent one, I believe it's a 32-1. We are playing against quad screeners. Of course, how else could it be this way? It's not often you find quad screeners on Master Chief Collection, at least in my experience. I'm not really sure why that is, but the one thing I can respect about quad screeners is they always have the heart. They may be single-celled organisms with a severe lack of thumbs and dexterity. However, they will always push at you, they will always run at you, and they will not give up hope. They're probably standing around their team, you know, they have each other to motivate each other. They're like, "Come on, Billy! Don't stop there! We've got this!" Even though they're at like a friggin' 40-5 deficit or something like that. They still keep fighting, they still keep pushing, and that's what allows me to get this beautiful scoreline. Nonetheless, today I want to talk about Star Wars Battlefront 3. This was the second game that I managed to play at EGX, and it's one that I had very mixed feelings about. I haven't been the biggest fan of DICE's new gameplay iterations. Battlefield 4 and Battlefield 3 were obviously going for the more modern combat feel. I think it was trying to be a little bit more arcadey in terms of the gameplay, a little bit more pick up and play. I don't necessarily think it was like, I'm not going to say it was like COD, I'm not going to say it was like super casual or something like that. I honestly do not believe that. But in terms of the breadth of the content and the depth of the gameplay that I saw from a game like Battlefield Bad Company 2, Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4 didn't bring the same sort of gameplay I was looking for, because Bad Company 2, despite being set in a similar military style of gameplay, it managed to really differentiate itself from COD at the time. And more with the games like Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4, I feel like it's becoming more and more homogenized, and Battlefield is less and less offering an experience completely different. I think one of the main reasons people play Battlefield now are for the vehicle gameplay, because the vehicle gameplay is so robust, and also just the dynamics of the map. But it's not quite as dynamic as it used to be with the destructible scenery and destructible environments. That was something I got really excited for personally, because every match seemed to seem completely different as a result, and especially with the vast variety of loadouts and weapon types. So going into Star Wars Battlefront 3, you could say I was open-minded. I would say I was cautiously pessimistic, but I was willing to give it a try and hoping that it could kind of change my mind. They've been very secretive about the gameplay that's on offer. We've heard small words about the content plans that they have on offer, and there's these charts comparing what older Battlefront games brought to the table and what Battlefront 3 brought to the table is going to bring to the table, I should say. And unfortunately, it kind of looks like it's paling in comparison in the quantity of Jedis, the quantity of levels, the quantity of content on general. Obviously, there's no story mode, and it just seems like each box is being unticked from Star Wars Battlefront. And Star Wars Battlefront 1 and 2, one of my favorite things about those games is the level of ambition they brought to the table. You could tell they were excited to work on the Star Wars license. This was a privilege for them, and they were really going the extra mile to pack in as much content as they physically could. One of the biggest problems I have with a lot of developers nowadays is it feels like the developers feel constrained either by the publishers, the amount of time they have to develop, or the resources, the technical resources in bringing both good graphics and a high deal of content to the table. And unfortunately, I think Star Wars Battlefront 3 looks like and feels like the archetype of that. Going into my first match, I have to say that the experience felt a little bit hollow, despite the striking sound design that DICE brought to the table and the really beautiful and stunning level design that they brought to the table. I found that there wasn't really much there to bite into. The gameplay mechanics go that you have these power-ups that appear on the map at random, and you pick them up and you'll get something like a shield, like the bubble shield. Looks a bit like Halo's bubble shield, which I guess offers a bit of dynamic to the battlefield, but it seems a little bit random and feels a bit like Mario Kart. To me, it feels like picking up a random power-up, and you get a green shell, or you get a red shell, and then every so often you'll get the star power, which is the Jedi. Now, one of the things I liked about Star Wars Battlefront is the Jedi was given to the person who was getting the most score per minute. The person who managed to make 10 kills before everyone else is the person who actually managed to get to the Jedi. I shouldn't say score per minute, I should say kills. The person who got to the kills the fastest, so it rewarded aggressive play. The person who was playing the most aggressive successfully was the person who got their hands on the Jedi first. I thought it was a fairly fair way of doing it. But, you know, it was at least fairer than the current system that they got, which is run into a random power-up and hope for the best. We also didn't get a Jedi in our gameplay, which was a little bit disappointing, which is obviously what you were hoping for out of your first Star Wars Battlefront playtest. But nonetheless, I don't really like that system. They still maintained the system of the Jedi lightsaber being your health bar, and then it depletes over time, and you've got to get kills to retain your Jedi position. That I do like. Once again, encouraging offensive play. If you just camp with the Jedi, you're not going to get very far because you're going to lose your privilege to play as the Jedi pretty darn quickly, so you have to kill to stay alive. Fight to survive kind of deal. But that seemed a little bit underwhelming, and the fact that they have a limited amount of Jedis on access in comparison to Battlefront 2 seems a bit disappointing, and I feel like it's an excuse to sell it to us in DLCs. You know, we're going to get a little taste of what's on offer, which will get us excited and getting us looking in the wallets for more because we know what's potentially on offer, but it's not quite in our hands yet, which I think is a kind of slimy way to develop games, and it goes away the philosophy that Pandemic brought to the table, which was give you guys as much content for the $40 asking price as physically possible, the $60, whatever the price tag is. And the gameplay itself, I should say, felt really underwhelming. It felt like Battlefield 4 reskinned in sci-fi, attributes, which was exactly what I was hoping it was not. The guns seem to shoot fairly similar. The feeling of killing the enemies does not feel as satisfying as I would like. You don't get as many sound effects and as immersive gameplay features as you might like. You know, we were playing at an event with loud, bulky headsets on. I remember when I played Titanfall for the first time at this event, my feeling of immersion just absolutely peaked in terms of, you know, the Titans dropping in, the sound design in general. But Battlefront, I managed to dip in and out in terms of immersion, which to me was a great shame. The vehicles, the flying vehicles, the controls on these felt overly floaty. The turning just didn't feel as precise and as crisp as you would like, and I ended up holding X to get out of the vehicle in sheer boredom. I managed to try a great deal of weapons. Also, I tried like a shotgun type weapon, a weapon that was more like an LMG, which was actually the most overpowered weapon. It was kind of like an LMG mixed with the AI. It had the range and it had the close quarters capability, so it just seemed kind of broken, to be honest. And then just like a regular assault rifle. The regular assault rifle was actually one of the most boring assault rifles I've ever seen. You know, I really liked the sci-fi aesthetic, so even a sci-fi Battlefield 4 should get me a little bit more excited than just your regular Battlefield game, because it's like, hey, it's blasters, it's shooters, you know, it's a bit more like Halo, it's a bit more like games you're maybe used to playing on a regular basis. But they just felt flimsy. They didn't feel particularly powerful. The animations on the enemies wasn't particularly exciting. And the combat itself, the auto-aim felt very strong. There was definitely bullet magnetism going on there. And then the only thing to differentiate the battles was this thruster pack type system. And once again, I should say straight away, right off the bat, that isn't exactly the most inventive way in adding depth to the gameplay when you've already seen that in Halo 4, in Advanced Warfare, in Halo 5. They're just copying a trope that is being shown in many games, and I can't say I'm the biggest fan. I wouldn't exactly call it creativity. Now, this thruster pack does go extremely far, to be fair. It goes further than any other thruster pack, but it also makes the gameplay seem kind of random and chaotic, and not in a good way. You know, a lot of what you saw in Star Wars in the movies was the teams really coordinating together and, concentrating fire and like large clusters of stormtroopers. Whereas with these jetpack abilities, it's kind of more like everyone just like thrusts off into the distance. And they've taken this spawning on your teammates feature once again back from Battlefield, where you can spawn on a teammate if he's alive on your squad mate. And it kind of makes the spawns and the gameplay feel super random and chaotic, and not in a particularly fun way, because, like I said, the guns aren't particularly interesting to use, so it doesn't feel like you're shredding people down. It feels like you're going for spawn traps, and then someone will randomly spawn behind you because their teammate made it past X barrier, and now they're spawning behind you, and it's just... I don't know. I can honestly say it was a severe disappointment, even though my expectations weren't particularly high to begin with. The map itself was poorly designed, in my opinion. If you compare it to Hoth on Battlefront 2, the tunnel systems and the bases were extremely intricate, and there were a lot of flanking routes and a lot of ways of being creative around your team. And to be fair, we only played it once, so I could be a little bit off base here in saying this, but it felt like there was way too much open space, way too much trench warfare. The trenches seemed to be the only way of differentiate your movement. There was very little bases and underground routes which you could take through the tunnels. I saw one or two, to be fair, but it wasn't as deep, and it didn't feel as well coordinated as Pandemic's effort on the Battle of Hoth. And playing the objective itself, you know, you kind of take down the AT-ATs via a QuickTime event where, well, I don't know if you call it a QuickTime event. It comes up with this, like, slider bar on your screen, and you have to get it within the bar to be able to take down the AT-AT, which felt a little bit cheap to me because it doesn't feel like, you know, this dynamic, true skill experience of, like, you've got to adapt to what the AT-AT is doing on the fly. You've just got to get it precisely in this bar, like this arrow goes from like left to right, and you've got to get it within that bar and keep it within the bar. And I think that's pretty disappointing because it just seems static gameplay for the most part. And that's pretty much how I describe Star Wars Battlefront 3, how it felt in general. It felt like it was either too static in terms of the weapons being kind of bland to use. The power-ups, there weren't too many power-ups, and the power-ups that you got weren't that interesting. It's almost like when you play one of those asteroids types games, or like, what are they called? Those shmups. They're called shmups, where you're like, it's like a scrolling screen, and you're shooting all these asteroids, and then you pick up a power-up, and it's like, this gives you double laser damage, this gives you a shield, this gives you a booster pack, or something like that. It's like that. It's that level of power-ups. It really isn't that interesting. There wasn't something I picked up where I was like, oh god, now I'm a god. It was just random power-ups that you picked up on the map, and they gave you a little ability. And even the nostalgia and the excitement of Star Wars, and bear in mind, I am someone who can get very excited about Star Wars, especially the soundtrack and the levels. I just felt detached from the experience. I felt like I was ready for it to end. And it wasn't like I was doing bad in the game. I still went like +6 or +8 or something like that. But it just felt kind of hollow, and it felt like it was missing the feel that I expected from Star Wars personally. So I hope this wasn't too negative, but this was just my honest impressions, and I personally do believe that this game needs a delay if it's gonna, you know, measure up to the expectations that people hold for the Star Wars series, because, you know, it's Star Wars. It needs to be amazing. But anyway, I've been Modest Major. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace out.